Somewhere on the moon, undisturbed for more than half a century, a set of footprints waits. No wind to scatter them, no rain to wash them smooth. Just a vacuum of an airless world, holding them in perfect suspension. 12 men's worth of bootprints pressed into the regolith, frozen since the last Apollo astronaut lifted off in December 1972. They are the most isolated artifacts of human ambition ever created, and for 53 years, nothing has come close to joining them. That was supposed to change. NASA's Artemis program was the answer, not just a return visit, but the beginning of something permanent, a sustained human presence on another world, the first chapter of a civilization that would one day stretch beyond this planet. When Artemis was announced in 2017, the language was breathless. We are going back, and this time we are staying. The target was 2024, then 2025, then 2026. The footprints remain undisturbed. So what exactly is happening? There is something quietly unsettling about the fact that the greatest engineering program in human history keeps getting stopped, not by the cosmos, not by the indifferent physics of deep space, but by something as humble as a leaking seal. The immediate challenge is Artemis II, the first crewed mission to the vicinity of the moon since Apollo 17. Not a landing, not yet, but a 10-day arc through deep space with 4 human beings inside: Reed Weissman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen. Their mission is to prove that the systems work, that the life support holds, that the navigation is true, that when it matters most, everything functions in the hostile dark between worlds. They were supposed to launch in early February 2026. On the 17th of January, the 98-meter-tall Space Launch System rocket, the most powerful rocket ever built, rolled out to Launch Pad 39B at Kennedy Space Center. A titan of engineering moving slowly toward the sky it was designed to breach. For a moment, it seemed like the program was finally gathering momentum. Then came Wet Dress Rehearsal 1, a full fueling simulation, a countdown test, a chance for the rocket to demonstrate, in miniature, everything it would need to do on launch day. The teams loaded liquid hydrogen, the smallest molecule in the universe, chilled to negative 252 degrees Celsius, a substance so reluctant to be contained that it finds microscopic paths through materials that should be impenetrable. And sure enough, a leak. Not catastrophic, not unexpected, but undeniable. Seals were replaced. A ground support filter was swapped out. The rehearsal was filed away as a partial success, and the teams pressed forward. Wet Dress Rehearsal 2, which concluded on the 19th of February, appeared to redeem them. 2.6 million liters of liquid hydrogen and oxygen flowed into the rocket's stages without incident. 2 countdown simulations were completed. The rocket was signed off as ready to fly. It wasn't ready to fly. In the quiet aftermath of the test, during what should have been a routine pressurization procedure, engineers discovered that helium wasn't flowing correctly inside the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, the rocket's upper stage. Helium is not a spectacular substance. It doesn't burn, it doesn't thrust, but it is the invisible architecture that holds the whole system together. It pressurizes the fuel tanks, purges the engine lines, and keeps volatile chemistry stable inside a vehicle that is, at its core, a controlled explosion waiting to happen. Without helium flowing correctly, there is no propulsion. Without propulsion, there is no mission. The source of the problem was eventually traced to a seal and a check valve. The location? Buried deep inside a section of the rocket that is completely inaccessible while it sits on the launch pad. NASA had no choice. The entire stack, rocket, capsule, umbilical tower, the sum total of years of work, was rolled back to the vehicle assembly building for repairs. The launch window slipped from February to March to April at the earliest. The leaks are not merely an inconvenience, they are a symptom. NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman has spoken carefully but clearly about what he calls skill atrophy. The SLS rocket last launched in November 2022 as part of Artemis I. That is nearly 4 years ago. In those 4 years, the workforce responsible for fueling, checking, and launching this machine has not had the opportunity to do the thing they were trained to do. Muscle memory fades. Institutional knowledge drifts. The engineers who caught the problem are skilled people, but there is a difference between understanding a system theoretically and knowing it viscerally, through repetition, through the 100 small corrections that accumulate when you launch something regularly. Compare this to Apollo. In November 1967, the Saturn V made its first flight. Less than 2 years later, it carried human beings to the moon. The program launched frequently enough that the team stayed sharp, the hardware stayed exercised, and problems were caught early because everyone involved had seen variations of them before. Artemis has not had that luxury. The answer, NASA believes, is to increase launch frequency. Not once every 3 years, but once every 10 months. This would keep both the rocket and the people who operate it in a state of readiness. It would transform Artemis from an event into a rhythm. But that future is contingent on the present. Artemis II has to fly first. There is a deeper shadow falling over this program, one that the technical delays only partly obscure. It has been more than 50 years since a crewed spacecraft left Earth orbit to the moon. The people who built Apollo, who solved its problems in real time, who accepted its terrifying risk calculus as the cost of doing something new, are no longer running things. We are, in a sense, relearning how to do what we once knew how to do. And we are doing it with new software, new contractors, and a rocket that has flown exactly once. NASA officials have faced uncomfortable questions about mission risk, about what happens if something goes wrong, not with hardware, but with the people inside. In the Apollo era, the loss of life, though never accepted lightly, was understood as a potential cost of exploring unknown territory. Now, with moon landings nominally proven possible, the tolerance for catastrophic failure has changed. And yet the reality of what Artemis is attempting has not changed. Flying 4 human beings to the vicinity of the moon for the first time in 54 years is still an act of extraordinary audacity. Artemis I revealed this tension with unsettling precision. The mission itself was a triumph, a 25-day arc through deep space, the first flight of SLS and the Orion capsule, a near-perfect demonstration of what the hardware could do. The European service module performed so well, generating such excess power from its solar arrays, that the capsule had time to take self-portraits with Earth as its backdrop. But the post-flight inspections found something troubling in the heat shield. Orion's ablative heat shield is made of a material called avcoat, the same substance that protected Apollo capsules as they plunged back into the atmosphere at 40,000 kilometers per hour. On Artemis I, that material chipped and eroded away in more than 100 locations, in ways that had never been seen before. Chunks simply broke off. Investigation revealed the cause. Gases generated during the extreme heating of re-entry were getting trapped inside the material. Normally, these gases vent outward through the charged surface layer, but this particular batch of avcoat lacked sufficient permeability, and internal pressure built until the shield cracked from within. The heat shield is not an engineering detail. It is the only thing standing between human beings and temperatures that would incinerate them. The discovery that it behaves unexpectedly under the exact conditions it was designed to handle is not a minor anomaly. It is a fundamental challenge. NASA's response has been controversial. Rather than redesigning the shield, they have redesigned the trajectory. On Artemis I, Orion performed a skip entry, dipping into the atmosphere, bouncing back out like a stone skimmed across water, then descending on a second pass. The maneuver reduces peak deceleration, but it turns out also allows gases to accumulate inside the shield during the extended heating phase. For Artemis II, the skip will be skipped. The capsule will descend on a steeper, more direct path, harder on the cruise bodies, more demanding for the guidance systems, but better for the shield's structural integrity. It is an uncomfortable trade-off, but the astronauts who understood it accepted it, and they will fly. For 9 years, the narrative of Artemis had a clean arc. Artemis I proved the rocket and capsule can reach the moon. Artemis II, add astronauts, test all remaining systems, fly a lunar flyby. Artemis III, land on the moon. That last chapter has been rewritten. As of February 2026, Artemis II will not land on the moon. Instead, it has been redefined as a 30-day systems test in low Earth orbit, a full all-up demonstration of the hardware and procedures needed for a lunar landing, conducted from the relative safety of Earth's neighborhood. The reason is sobering in its honesty. An independent safety panel warned that the previous plan carried a compounded level of technical risk that was simply too high. To land on the moon, Orion would first need to dock with SpaceX's Starship Human Landing System, a vehicle of staggering scale that requires more than a dozen tanker flights just to refuel before it can depart for lunar orbit. The docking would be the first of its kind for a crewed Artemis mission. The cryogenic fuel transfer would be first of its kind. The spacesuits waiting inside the lander were untested in the actual vacuum of space. Stack these first on top of each other, 390,000 kilometers from home, and you have a mission profile that leaves almost no margin for the unexpected. The decision to step back, to test near Earth before committing to the moon, is the decision that Apollo made in 1969 when it flew Apollo 9 in Earth orbit before Apollo 10 went to lunar orbit before Apollo 11 descended to the surface. It is the decision of engineers who know how many things can go wrong, and who have decided that being cautious now is the only way to be certain later. In 2027, Artemis III will see Orion rendezvous and dock with either SpaceX's Starship or Blue Origin's Blue Moon lander in Earth orbit. Life support will be tested, communications will be verified, docking procedures will be rehearsed. The suits, the Axiom extravehicular mobility units, developed with Axiom Space and with the design heritage of Prada, will be worn in the actual vacuum of space for the first time, validating whether their advanced fabric joints, their cryogenic-grade life support, their Nokia integrated 4G communications, and Oakley visor systems can actually protect the human being in the environment for which they were designed. Only then will those systems be trusted on the moon. The new target for boots on the lunar surface is Artemis IV, now planned for early 2028. And the place those boots will land is unlike anywhere human beings have ever stood. The Apollo landing sites were chosen for safety: relatively flat equatorial terrain, plenty of sunlight, minimal navigation complexity. What they lacked was the thing that makes the moon scientifically and strategically extraordinary: water. The lunar equator is dry. But at the poles, where the moon's nearly vertical axis keeps the sun perpetually low on the horizon, there are places where sunlight has not touched the ground in billions of years. These are the permanently shadowed regions, craters and depressions where temperatures fall to nearly negative 240 degrees Celsius, colder than the surface of Pluto. In these frozen caverns, preserved by the perfect stillness of a world without weather, there is ice. Water ice delivered by ancient comets and asteroids, locked in darkness since before complex life existed on Earth. The scientific implications are significant. The strategic implications are seismic. Water on the moon is not merely interesting, it is transformational. Split water with electricity, and you get hydrogen and oxygen, rocket propellant and breathable air. A moon with accessible water ice is not just a destination, it is a way station, a refueling depot, the first node of an infrastructure that could one day support missions to Mars and beyond. The south pole of the moon is potentially the most valuable piece of real estate in the solar system. Artemis IV will carry instruments calibrated to understand this environment in precise detail. DUSTER, the Dust and Plasma Environment Surveyor, will study the behavior of lunar regolith during landings and human activity. Lunar dust is not like anything on Earth. It is composed of jagged, microscopic shards of volcanic glass, electrostatically charged by the solar wind, capable of destroying seals, contaminating equipment, and damaging lungs. Understanding it is not optional, it is existential for any sustained presence. DUSTER will write a small autonomous rover called MAP, documenting how the dust behaves when disturbed. The South Pole Seismic Station will listen to the moon itself, measuring the tremors of moonquakes, counting meteorite impacts, and mapping the subsurface through controlled seismic pulses delivered by an instrument called a thumper. Beneath the surface, those pulses will reveal the architecture of the ground, where it is solid, where it is fractured, and crucially, where ice might be buried. One location of particular interest is Shackleton Crater, 21 kilometers wide, 4 kilometers deep, with walls steep enough to exceed a 30-degree slope. A world of permanent darkness at the bottom and permanent sunlight at its rim. A place where solar panels could run continuously while the floor below holds ancient volatiles in an undisturbed cold. It is a place that looks, in the data, like somewhere extraordinary is waiting to be found. But the race to reach it is not driven only by scientific curiosity. There is another program, in another country, methodically checking off milestones toward the same destination. In 1969, we reached the lunar surface because we were willing to take enormous risks in a race against a rival. The cost was measured in lives and close calls, and 1,000 problems solved under impossible pressure. What we built did not last. The last human being left the moon in 1972, and the footprints waited and waited and waited. What Artemis is building is different. The transition to a standardized launch system, the methodical accumulation of tested firsts, the scientific focus on the South Pole rather than a symbolic equatorial touchdown. This is the architecture of something meant to endure. Not a moment, but a beginning. The delays were real, the technical challenges were formidable, the geopolitical pressure immense. The mission was not perfect, nothing so audacious ever is, but the systems held, the crew was safe, and everything that comes next, the orbital rehearsals, the suit tests, the slow accumulation of proven firsts, now rests on a foundation that has been tested by 4 human beings who flew to the moon and came back. Those footprints on the moon have been waiting 53 years. The people who left them are old now, or gone. The world has changed in ways no one who stood on that surface could have predicted. And still the moon hangs overhead, as it always has, patient, indifferent, holding its secrets in the permanent dark of craters that have never known sunlight. In 2028, if everything continues as it now must, someone will walk again in that silence. They will look back at the Earth, brilliant and impossibly blue against the black, and they will carry with them not just the ambitions of a nation, but the accumulated determination of everyone who refused to stop trying. The footprints will no longer be alone.